Hey guys, I added my AirPods in last minute. Can we hear me okay?
I can.
Yeah?
Good on
Okay.
my side.
Awesome. Okay. Well, welcome to Blockchain Banter. I'm Jen. I'm your host. I am here with Brad, BizDev at COTI. Brad, thank you so much for joining me. It's nice to have you again. It's been a good while since you've been on with us, and a lot has happened since. So we're going to get into all of this, but it's great to have you back. Thank you.
Not at all. Not at all. This is my home from home on the Carbon DeFi spaces. So.
Well, it's good to have you. I'm also here with Glenn, who is BizDev at Bancor, along with Mark Richardson, project lead at Bancor. Thank you guys, as always, for joining me. You guys were on a call with me previously where we talk about decentralization and whether or not this really matters anymore. And this is kind of, it made me think of this discussion that we're having today, because decentralization, was always at the core of blockchain and crypto. And we had started to see this shift a little bit in the industry as we grew. And I'm seeing the same sort of shift with transparency. I feel like this was always one of the core characteristics, or the core, like the ethos of crypto and blockchain. And we're seeing this shift now to where we were once calling so loudly for transparency. It's kind of the opposite now, where we're seeing more and more really calling for privacy. Do you guys think one, are you seeing the same? I think if you're on crypto Twitter at all, or like aware of what's going on, you'll see a lot of posts and things from big names and a lot of these projects really gaining attention, COTI included, right? Do you think it's just the industry growing and just us maturing, or do you think that there might be something specific that's leading to this? And it's an open question. Anybody could join in. We don't need to raise hands or wait for me to call on you. I might if it's a specific question. But Brad, maybe you go first.
Sure.
What do you think it is from your point of view?
I think for me, I started to feel that narrative switch when I went to ETH Cans at the start of the year, and ETHCC was this massive push on privacy. I must have attended like 15 talks on privacy, and suddenly it took center stage. And I think the feeling behind that was I think we got to a crossroads where it was like we had these, this transparency feature that blockchain was heralded for since its inception. And that was great for people who valued openness and fairness and, verifiability, which, by the way, you don't necessarily lose with privacy. And that's good for them. But the crossroads was, if we're going to have mass adoption, and if we're going to have enterprises on a blockchain, if we're going to have institutions come onto a blockchain, then they demand privacy. And I think it was that acknowledgement that you have to forego transparency in order to open up to everyone else, that kind of left the switch to privacy over transparency. But it's been a big shift. Also, like, compliance is boring, so I think people don't get into it, but there's a growing understanding that there are frameworks in place to protect people and to protect institutions, right? So if you're a consumer, how you handle that consumer data needs to work under GDPR. It has to. And like, the way I think about this is one of the core defining features of GDPR is, you have the right to revoke data, to take back your access to data. And if you're a business or you're an institution and you're using a public network, the second that you handle confidential consumer data on a public network, you immediately violate GDPR. So it just doesn't work for enterprises. It just doesn't work for institutions. Similarly, if you're an institution and you're working within, financial markets, maybe you want to invest in securities, or in if you're on a blockchain and you wanted to have a fractional ownership of real estate, or if you wanted to buy whatever it is, a gilt or a T-bill, there is a very big value that is discretion in financial markets, particularly for institutions. If we surrender that discretion and we demand transparency, no institution will use a blockchain. So I think we got to that crossroads, and I think the overwhelming response is no, we need privacy, and I think that's for the best.
Do you guys see us? You said forgo transparency. Do you see kind of like an overlap, or do you see us forgoing transparency? Because there's still a level of transparency while bringing in this level of privacy as well, right?
Yeah, I think that speaks to composable privacy, right?
Okay, let's speak about composable privacy then. I
Well,
don't know much. I mean, what's the difference between privacy and composable privacy? Maybe you can.
Well, I mean, the way I think about it is, I mean, if you look at absolute privacy, you know, you often get these fenced off, like, private environments that, you know, aren't, there's no transparency at all. It's like a black box and you don't know what happens. You're normally KYC'd on entry, but it's like a perimetered, fenced off blockchain that you can keep things private on. That is fully private. When I think about composable privacy, it's empowering developers, users, and institutions with the license to choose what stays public and what stays private. And I think that's quite a powerful thing. I mean, not everything has to be private. And so I think you can maintain the initial principles that people heralded blockchain for. You can still keep elements of transparency. You can still choose parts of data or journey or process that stays public, but you can choose the very sensitive areas to be private. And I think that's an important distinction.
Important distinction for sure. Glenn and Mark, I want to bring you guys into this because Glenn, you do BD at Bancor. And so are you seeing the same thing? You're speaking with token projects, you're speaking with, you know, DEXs, you're speaking with blockchains. Do you see more and more bringing in this sort of privacy factor as well?
Yeah, I would say I think Brad is right, especially at DevConnect. There's a lot of projects that are operating within the same angle. Where sort of, okay, they're trying to bring some sort of privacy to transactions, right? And I think there's different like approaches, right? One of the things that I think it's important, or why we're seeing this now, I think the technology is actually there now, right? My understanding is like this like proofs, some of these proofs that you have to do in order to assert that something is true, right? Without revealing the actual information. Like this would take a lot of time before versus now, right? You can actually do these things in a matter of like seconds, right? And they're always trying to improve this so that you can do a lot of more proofs, right, in less amount, right? But when it comes to like, okay, the privacy angle, right, I would say there's a lot of projects. I think there's a lot of angles, right? Some of these projects are sort of doing a specific blockchain that's focused on privacy, right? There's others that are trying to sort of tap into existing blockchains via some sort of like a code processor or something like this, right? To enable this functionality where developers would have to use like an SDK, potentially update their smart contracts and use some of these like functions that provide this functionality. But I would say this narrative has been quite strong this year, 2025. And I do see this picking up more steam, right? Especially as Brad mentioned, right? Institutions, this is like one of the things that they might care about more than, general, I guess, users of blockchain, right? I mean, like, obviously, like people do care about having some sort of privacy with the things that they do, but I think institutions have a higher bar or standard when it comes to these things, just because they operate in these environments already, right? When it comes to like protection laws and all these other things they have to abide by for like their users, essentially.
It's a good point. It's almost like an obligation that they have. You know, we were speaking with Aureus. I don't know if any of our viewers caught that call, but it was a fantastic call. It was about the institutions and RWAs and regulation and things of the sort. And they were saying, you know, they needed this privacy solution for their institutions. And, you know, you had briefly mentioned compliance earlier, Brad. I asked them specifically, what was it about COTI that you had chosen to, you know, like, what was it that sold you? You know what I mean? Why did you choose COTI? And it was the compliance. They are extremely concerned with maintaining their compliance, and they were able to with COTI. I want to kind of revisit that in a little bit. But Mark, question for you, because think it was Glenn that just said that we see more of these coming on chain, right? Or more of these privacy solutions. You were previously, and I might be putting you on the spot here, you've spoken about privacy solutions before. You've specifically highlighted COTI, and I don't believe it's just because Carbon DeFi is on, or Bancor, has products on COTI. You had mentioned that you had read the white paper, you were impressed with this, and you're a fan of ZK syncs and things like this, but there was something about COTI that really stood out to you. One was the fact that they were just live in general, right? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you recall this conversation, Mark?
Yes. Hello. Sorry. Yeah. So the thing. Yeah, I remember the conversation. Sorry, you were dropping out for parts of what you were saying, so I'm kind of trying to read between the lines. But maybe I can play off a little bit of what Glenn said, because what Glenn was talking about there was ZK proofs and the fact that these are so difficult to do, and really that's been the let's say the predominant narrative since as long as I've been in blockchain, right? Since like 2019, is that ZK proofs and ZK technology in general is going to be the sort of exactly what the doctor ordered. But no one ever tells you how incomplete a technology it is. And I don't want to name any projects, because I think everyone working in the privacy sector, ZK technology included, it should be applauded for what they do. But at some stage, that little critical voice in my head is asking the question, why hasn't that taken off yet? And the answer is super simple, and that is that it really is kind of a developing science, and that the way that ZK proofs ought to be done is a work in progress. And sure, there's super compelling research on that front, but no one really knows how far away the good ZK solution is going to be, or when it's going to, be suitable for adoption in a sort of a widespread way. And it was when I was becoming increasingly critical of ZK that I discovered COTI, right? And that the COTI white paper came across my desk, largely because, Bancor and COTI were now talking to each other. And it was the first time I had heard about garbled circuits. And I just remember thinking, like, why is this the first time I'm hearing about this? It's such an obvious thing for, like, the whole blockchain industry to have become obsessed with, and it didn't. And I think that really speaks to this, like, the scholarship of the COTI developers and how they chose this thing, because they didn't choose a privacy technology for the sake of hype, right? Appealing to a specific, audience. It was because they needed a privacy technology that actually provably works. Now, at the time that garbled circuits was developed, which is like sort of the 1960s, 1970s, one of the things that people were critical of it back then was that, sure, it's a complete theory, but the memory footprint for those truth tables is prohibitively large. But we're in 2025 now, and there's no shortage of memory anymore, and it's just such a compelling solution. And I think that's kind of where I landed in that conversation, and I maintain it today. Is that sometimes building a better mousetrap is a bad way to do things. Sometimes, going back and finding, a solution that was kind of ahead of its time in terms of the technology of the day, and realizing that you can modernize it, is actually like not just a more pragmatic approach, but I think it also requires a cleverness and clarity of thought that I think the whole zero knowledge proof space is actually missing. Like, if it was the case that privacy was the most important thing, and having having something that works demonstrably and doesn't have this huge R&D lead time, I think everyone, in that sector would have adopted garbled circuits, which speaks maybe a little bit to the lack of pragmatism, or maybe even an insincerity on behalf of some of the people in that space that claim that privacy is their priority.
Mark,
Whereas
you're
in
cutting
COTI's
out a little
case,
bit.
it really does seem like it works now, and there's nothing to wait for. And I think that that's a beautiful thing.
Brad, I don't know if you want to add anything to it. He was cutting out for a minute, but I think everybody was able to hear what he was saying, especially at the end. I think it's a really solid point, what he was making. Now, how long has COTI had garbled circuits live? Because you're muted.
Since April of 2024. So 25, sorry. So we've been live with privacy for nearly a year.
Nearly a year.
Nearly a year.
So
yeah.
maybe this is why we hadn't heard much about it before, because now it's really becoming a narrative. But I think what Mark is saying also has, some truth to it as well. Right. You see these solutions that, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, definitely. I totally agree with you. What Mark says has a lot of weight, and I won't make assumptions about what Mark is saying. So he might have a different view, but to follow on, like it's there's a lot of there's a big sunk cost in ZK technology. First of all, it's an incredible technology, and it has a big part to play in privacy. The way I think about it is, as a scaling solution, it's amazing, but also as a for me, if I think about like more primitive privacy use cases like send and receive, then it does do great things. And we spent a lot of time on it, but it gets to a point where I think you start to have the square peg in a round hole situation, where we've got this privacy tool and we're trying to brute force it to make it better and to fit different use cases. And, objectively it doesn't. And, what we've done at COTI is go back a long time to the 1990s, I believe, where garbled circuits was like cryptographically verified. And it just so happened that Soda Labs were working on that solution for the last couple of years. And we've now been able to modernize it and integrate it within a blockchain. And so, I totally agree with Mark. We've taken a step back. We've looked at the class of technologies in decentralized confidential computing, and then we've modernized that and adapted it to a blockchain. Now we have something that stands up to real-time needs, scalable privacy, negligible cost, and is use case agnostic. So we can start to look at complex DeFi operations. We can start to look at real-world assets issued on a blockchain, and we can look at privacy-preserving machine learning, and we can look at voting, and the list is endless. But it broadens the scope of what we're able to institute as an industry, particularly within privacy.
What sort of use cases do you think are going to be the most interesting? I'm sure you get asked this all the time, but I see a comment here about, the privacy of medical records. Is there anything that you from the get-go? I mean, I would love to see privacy records and things like that. I know we talk about institutions, but even as a retail investor, I think Glenn, you had said, for retail, like whatever, but even as a retail user, I don't necessarily want everybody, if they know my wallet, so many people have their NFT as their PFP, right? Or an NFT as their PFP. And yeah, it might be a fresh wallet, but you might send some ETH or some COTI or something from somewhere else. If they want to, we can probably find someone's wallet. I don't think I necessarily want everyone knowing all of this. I think from the get-go, I appreciated the transparency, but did I necessarily want that level? That's just like a personal thing. But is there any specific use case, any, of the three of you that you would really like to see, maybe outside of DeFi?
I'll start
No?
by saying that I think most users, I would say, we all have a public wallet, which is linked to some sort of an ENS type of record system, right? And
Yeah.
then we also have private wallets, right, which we tend not to share for specific reasons, obviously, right? So that is like the current, I would say, standard when it comes to like how you should do these things. But obviously, right, you are still, someone can still figure out these wallets, right? Especially because a lot of these are funded from an exchange, right? And then these exchanges, they do have KYC, and then they know where you're sending and receiving from, right? So that is always available, right? I would say when it becomes more interesting is when you look at the dApps that are out there that people are using, right? Obviously, there's things like Tornado Cash, there's Railgun, right? There's a few of these that are trying to essentially make transactions, I guess, confidential to a certain extent, right? Where you don't want to share necessarily where you're sending tokens or amounts, type like what amounts you're sending to who, right? These are things that we all, I would say, care about in terms of privacy, right? There's certain things that you might not necessarily care about, but there's other things that you might not want to share with the world publicly, right? When it comes to DeFi, I think this is where it does get more trickier into how you can interact with DeFi protocols, right, while still maintaining some sort of privacy or confidentiality, right? Just because a lot of like DeFi protocols, the smart contracts cannot understand how to interact with like information that might be encrypted or garbled somehow, right? So this is where you do need to have the developers do the work here and rewrite a lot of the functionality in order to support this type of data, right? And there's obviously like solutions that are in the market now. Obviously, COTI is one of them, right? Where you can utilize some of the functionality that the blockchain provides, right? But this wasn't available, like Brad said, like COTI V2 went live last year, right? It's almost a year old, right? So these things do take time to adapt into existing protocols, right? So I would hopefully think that by next year, we should have more dApps that are sort of available for the public to use and consume, right? And then from there on, I think it's just like a cascade, right? Like this is something that developers do by default.
I still can't believe it's been less than a year. I feel like it's been longer than this. I don't know. Maybe just because we're always like engaging with the COTI community so much. You guys always have such an active community. And it's not just the community that I see speaking, so loud and proud about the solution, but others, like I was saying as well. Maybe now this is where we'll see that shift from what Mark was saying earlier about why aren't we seeing more people talking about COTI's solution? Maybe just because privacy in general wasn't really on the radar. ZK had been a discussion point for so long. And in the meantime, COTI went live, right? Like Garbled Circus, which was introduced. And so it was kind of like they were still in that mindset of the ZK. But maybe now that so many more eyes are really focused on privacy solutions in general, we'll start to see a little bit more of that shift. And Glenn, I understand what you're saying too with the DEXs, because certain DEXs, you want people to know what you're doing. Like Carbon DeFi, you're broadcasting your bids and asks, right? That you don't necessarily want that privacy in that. You want the transparency in what it is you're aiming to do, right? Your intent for your transactions or your trades. So I think different DeFi protocols in different aspects will find that balance too between the privacy and the transparency, the same way we were speaking about earlier. Brad, you unmuted. You wanted to add something?
Yeah, for sure. I think just in terms of the way we think about privacy, like you say right now, the focus is all around ZK. And it's around these, like I said, these more primitive like use cases of like sending receives and wallet balances. I think privacy it's been a great year for privacy, but I think we're in phase one of a broader privacy narrative, right? The first wave is around the importance of privacy, safeguarding your own digital footprint, enabling institutions to use a blockchain, private send receive. The second phase will be about programmable privacy, and it's programmable privacy where COTI will really excel. To your point, we haven't been live for that long yet, but I'm excited about a number of things. I think, first and foremost, within DeFi is, private DEXs. I think what we'll be able to do with COTI is, broadcast. We'll be able to match, buy and sell orders, but we'll be able to do so discreetly because we can operate over data while it stays encrypted. For things like lending and borrowing, I would love a user to be able to use a lending and borrowing protocol, or an institution to put, major assets like ETH, Bitcoin, USDC to work, but with that discretion we spoke about. Be able to work with, private ERC20s and private pools. I would love to see, private RWAs on COTI. I think that would be a massive unlock for institutions. And then, as we talk about, complex use cases, things that excite me, we mentioned healthcare. I think federated learning is a massive one that I'm really excited to see. We do have projects today that use healthcare supply chains. So they use government assets and they send the data from government assets encrypted to COTI. We then evaluate that data, and we're able to say which children can receive which vials of vaccine, at the vial level, which vaccines can be administered to children. Those types of use cases really excite me. But I think across the most exciting things for me are, yes, private DeFi. I'd love to see private RWAs. And I think we will. And then we have the healthcare sector as well. And I think there's a lot to be done there.
When you mentioned the matching, the buying and selling, Mark, is that something like the ARB fast lane possibly? Because I know the ARB fast lane, serves as a de facto taker in Carbon DeFi. So this might be something. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yes and no. So yeah, I mean, with the ARB fast lane on COTI, we actually do have, we do use garbled circuits for aspects of what it does. And this is partially to avoid, malicious front running and other things. And so it's really nice to have some of the features of the COTI blockchain that can, protect us against the kinds of, I don't want to say exploits, but let's say adversarial conditions that we often run into in blockchain contexts. But yeah, matching bids and asks from people who are actively submitting price quotes is absolutely something that you can do with with complete privacy. This is you don't actually need someone to in the middle who can who has to sort of look underneath what's happening and piece those things together. You can actually just run it as a completely private computation. These are always going to be things that are in high demand and kind of sit above the conventional market structure. And I think that this is an important thing to point out, because you can never it's not that one replaces the other, or that one is better than or should just should completely shoulder out the alternative, because they're not alternatives. They have specific use cases and they both serve different purposes. And I think just in general, the privacy conversation, even a little bit sort of in this conversation, listening to how Jen and Glenn have spoken about things, I think often what happens, especially because of the fact that everyone's so heavily steeped in DeFi, people confuse privacy and secrecy, because they're often not the same thing. Glenn pointed, for example, to Tornado Cash as something that's a privacy preserving technology, and to some extent that's true, but privacy is a much it doesn't.
Oh, it's getting good. Mark, you cut out.
The tokens that you're sending, right? Oh,
Wait, Okay, no, we heard that privacy, like you just started speaking about Tornado Cash and the difference between the secrecy and
Okay.
the privacy. If we could backtrack to
Yeah, I
that.
just I'll backtrack to that. So, a lot of people point to Tornado Cash and go, "Look, this is an an example or some standard that we should hold privacy to," but that it's not necessarily a private technology. And I don't think that that's controversial. Every time there's a hack happening, the first thing that people point out is how much ETH got sent to Tornado Cash. Sure, it might be secret once it comes out of it, right? Or at least it obscures, who sends funds in and who receives funds on the other side. But it's not really a private technology. It's more a money laundering protocol. I don't think it was really designed with that use case in mind. I actually do think the developers had a good idea behind them, but largely that's what it's used for today. It obscures the trail for funds and makes things difficult to trace. But that's not what privacy is. You can have a wallet that has normal ERC20 tokens in it and sends it to another normal wallet, and still have that be a private transaction, as long as the EOA and the ownership of that EOA, for example, doesn't connect to an actual specific individual. And I think that this is important because I think largely because of things like Tornado Cash and like Monero and like ZEC, privacy and secrecy and criminal activity get conflated a lot. And that's a huge mistake, right? Often privacy is more about law abiding and trying to do things in a responsible way than what people would usually ascribe to something like Tornado Cash, for example. And I think it's just really important to delineate these things. Privacy is mostly about protection of the individual, and much less about clandestine activity. They're not the same thing.
Such a good point. And I'm not sure I made that distinction in my own head, really. Like, once you actually break it down like that, what you started, I'm like, I named it transparency versus privacy. I want to add the versus secrecy on the back end of this now, because I really don't think you see that. And you have such a valid point. Anytime there's an exploit, that's what they're saying. This much has already been tornadoed. Now it's up to this much. Now it's 1,400 ETH. Now we're up to this much ETH tornadoed. And this is what, people are looking at to see how much had been exploited, or to see how much they may very well get away with at the end of the day, right? But I don't think I really thought about it as like the privacy versus the secrecy, so black and white in that sense. But you're right. Privacy is very much more protecting the individual and being able to, I think Aureus had put it when I asked them, and they were talking about the compliance factor, how they needed to be able to, the institutions needed to be able to protect themselves, that they didn't want everything to be completely transparent. But if anything were to happen, if the government said, hey, or officials said, hey, we need to see what's been going on here, somebody's got to have a key to that black box. And otherwise, that's it. Like, they're not opening it. The key is there and it's locked away and it's whatever it is. Everything in the black box stays within that black box, unless it needs to be unlocked and presented to an actual official. But that's a really, really good point, Mark. Thank you for touching on that, because it's something that I hadn't thought about, and I hope others do also. Brad, you unmuted. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think I'll just add on. I mean, within the way that COTI have set ourselves up, I think, like Mark says, that when it comes to privacy, you don't necessarily need to keep everything secret and anonymous, right? Like the flow of transactions from our perspective is generally required. Like for AML, definitely for regulatory oversight, having wallet-to-wallet viewership is important. The details of transactions, the amount of tokens, the type of token, like that does not need to be revealed. And I think that's the difference between privacy and secrecy. And then to your point around Aureus, one of the major distinguishing factors between privacy and secrecy is, secrecy is not letting anyone ever see anything ever. And that's not what we're trying to achieve. So for COTI, we use a data privacy framework. What that essentially allows you to do is, at the smart contract level, just choose, which pieces of data you want to permission to a regulator or to a third party or to a DApp. If you have a decentralized identity, it doesn't need to be fully secret. You can permission a DApp to see a segment of that data. Or if you're if you're working with RWAs and you have regulators, then you can allow regulators to see transaction details. And I think that's the important distinction that Mark's making. Is it's not about secrecy, it's about privacy, and then having that selective optionality to give people, regulators, or DApps the license to see what they need. And that's very different.
Yeah. I want to touch on the COTI Earn program that you guys have going on. But first, I want to ask, Mark and Glenn, as, contributors at Bancor and having Carbon DeFi, your answer is going to be from the opposite side of Brad, but really it's a question for all of you guys. What are projects looking for? What should they be really looking for when they are looking for a privacy solution? I know we touched on a few different things, compliance being one of them. But if they're maybe just starting out or they're unsure of it, and this is something that had come from Aureus as well, right? Like there were privacy solutions, but they weren't really compliant. Is it as simple as just simply asking how to, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I think it's important. I hope Brad will agree with me. I'm not sure, but I hope he will. Compliance isn't a technological problem, right? Compliance is a process, right?
Right.
And no one can invent a technology that is going to just like fix compliance. It's a discussion that happens with regulators and has to constantly be updated when there's policy changes and everything else. So compliance is really something that you do with a blockchain. Now, there are things that just, by its nature will never be compliant. And so obviously you want to have things that make compliance easier, right? Or facilitate, the way that you interact with your regulator and lawmakers and so on. And unfortunately with blockchains, you're not really spoiled for choice. I think COTI is one of, if not the most compelling solution for these things just because of the flexibility of it. But I think that, and this is coming back to, my role inside of Bancor. One of the things that I pay attention to is certainty. And at its heart, one of the things that I'm constantly wondering about is that ZK proofs by their nature are statistical, right? You never, like with any ZK proof, you never actually get to 100% certainty. You can't. It's a mathematical impossibility. All you can do is basically run the algorithm n number of times until you've gotten up to a certain threshold that you would consider certain enough that it's unlikely that someone's tried to fake this proof. Now you can do that up to like 99% certainty or 99.9 or as many nines as you want, but that requires more and more compute. The difference with something like a garbled circuit is that you only have to run the algorithm once, and it gives you 100% certainty every time. It's a completely finished, Turing complete, like at the very heart of computer science, sort of finished technology. And that I think matters when I'm doing protocol design and things. One of the things that I pay attention to, and I wish more people would pay attention to, is things like, fixed point arithmetic and precision and accuracy of the calculations that we have to perform. Because when you make an approximation that's bad, it can be the difference between, your protocol surviving forever or your protocol getting drained for hundreds of millions of dollars. And I think if you are expecting to arrive on a blockchain because you're servicing the demographics to whom privacy matters a lot, and as Brad said, these are the institutional clients, and it's not that they necessarily demand privacy, but it's that the people who are governing them demand that they are private. And so this is, it might not be hundreds of millions of dollars, it might be hundreds of billions or more than that. And so if that margin of error in the computation that you're running, this isn't just, I'm not saying that when the ZK fails necessarily, but that means that, oh, whoops, someone's going to read my transaction. It's much worse than that. It means that someone might actually be faking the transaction itself and, trying to manipulate a wallet balance or something else. And whatever that margin of uncertainty is something you're going to have to live with forever. And this is, I think, one of, like, from the protocol design perspective, it's the thing that I like about garbled circuits the most, is that at the end of the day, it is a normal computation. It's just run in a way that that the people who have run the computation don't necessarily know what they're computing. But the answer is 100%, at least within the arithmetic error or whatever it is that you're doing on the protocol design level, but that would affect it whether it's private or not. And I think that that's something you should pay attention to. Is the privacy solution that you're using even computationally sound? And there really aren't any other options at the moment. It's garbled circuits or nothing.
I'm for sure clipping that, just for the record. It was too good. I'm going to also, Mark, you do speak about fixed point arithmetic quite often, and I think it's necessary, like the actual precision. It's interesting though, because I'd never heard you speak about it in terms of COTI and garbled circuits. I know that you are a big fan of it, and I know that you are extremely serious about the precision and accuracy. But I didn't realize that the two had overlapped. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, for the sake of clarification, these aren't the same thing. Like I'm drawing a parallel between these things. But what I mean is that at the end of the day, what matters to me the most is whether or not you can trust. Whether or not you can trust the calculation. And in most of the, in some of the privacy preserving technologies out there, you lose a lot of that certainty. And for me, that's unacceptable. And yeah, I don't hear this criticized often enough.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. Brad, I don't know if you want to add anything to that before we get into the Earn program, but if you do, I want to.
What can you add on top of that?
He sometimes has these amazing mic drop moments where I'm like, oh, good.
I agree. Good. No, it's a really good way to think about it. It's a really good point. With ZK, you're proving something, and it's can I gather enough evidence? And there's a margin for error. And with garbled circuits, it's a calculation that nobody else can do or read.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Glenn, I see that you're sharing your screen. You got it ready in advance for me when I had mentioned COTI Earn. Do you mind if I bring it up here? Can we talk about the campaign that you guys have going right now and maybe a little bit of Carbon DeFi here as well? Yeah. Okay, so we're in season 2. Maybe Brad and Glenn, you guys can tell me, maybe Brad, you could tell me a little bit about season 2 and the Earn program. And then, we have about 10 minutes, but then we can, Glenn, if you don't mind, switch over to possibly the Carbon DeFi app, and we can show our viewers what they can actually do on Carbon DeFi, a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, for those in the audience who aren't familiar with COTI Earn, so COTI Earn is our ecosystem incentives program. It essentially incentivizes you to hold assets on the network, but more importantly, to engage with decentralized applications within our ecosystem. So every season, we come up with fine-tuned strategies, and we allocate token points for users if they undertake certain actions. So you can see on your screen here, you can stake COTI, you can hold USDC on the network, you can hold wrapped Bitcoin, wrapped ETH, and many more. But within this, we use token points as a means to gear incentives. So for undertaking some strategies, you'll earn X TPs, but for doing a different strategy, you will earn more TPs. And so what you'll see within this is that at the heart of our ecosystem incentives program, if you're interacting and you're using Carbon DeFi on COTI, you'll be incentivized in an outsized way for holding assets on the network, for using them in Carbon DeFi, and for undertaking some strategies that I think Glenn will probably show a couple of.
Yeah, let me share the Carbon DeFi tab here. So I'm going to share this tab. This is on coti.carbondefi.xyz. And as Brad was saying, there's a few different tokens that are being incentivized. Essentially, these tokens, if you create trading strategies, then you will get these TPs, right? These token points, I believe that's what it stands for. Some of them provide more TPs than other, but generally, what you can do on Carbon DeFi, right, from the essentials is you can provide full range liquidity, right? So this is one token against another. You choose a trading pair. Perhaps that might be Pengo against COTI or Pengo against USDC. And you decide, right? Okay, I'm going to provide some amount of USDC liquidity. Maybe that's 100 USDC, right? Carbon DeFi is going to tell you the equivalent in Pengo that you will need. And then this allows you to create a content product strategy that is going to distribute that liquidity between 0 and infinity, right? If you're a little bit more advanced, you might want to provide concentrated liquidity, and that's also possible, right? If we look at the price chart, for example, I think this is the COTI or this is the Pengo USDC price chart, 3 months, right? You might be interested in providing concentrated liquidity somewhere in here, perhaps, right? And similar to content product, you get to decide the token, right? The quantity. And once you do that, you can essentially create this trading strategy, right? So this is available under both content product, concentrated liquidity. Obviously, you can select the fee tier here, aka spread, how much you want to charge the market to utilize that liquidity. But then you can also get into more advanced strategies where you can do things like a recurring range, right? So if you choose, for example, COTI against, let's say, GCOTI, right? If we look at the price chart for this, right, you might decide, okay, when it's down here, I am buying. When it's up here, I am selling, right? And this might be your simple buy low, sell high strategy, right? Where you might contribute some amount of COTI and then some amount of GCOTI, right? Such that as the market price goes into your buy range, in the green, you're buying. When it goes to the red range, you're selling. And you do this on repeat, right? So this strategy will trade forever until you decide to stop it. And then obviously this gap here, which is the spread, is what you're earning. So the more this strategy trades, the better it is for you, right? The more buy low, sell high that you do over some period of time, the more your earning is going to be. And then obviously this also, keep in mind that there is the COTI Earn program that's ongoing. So you'll also get those rewards, right? So this is in addition to the COTI Earn rewards you will earn from buying low and selling high on Carbon DeFi, right? These are basic, I would say, the three strategies you might want to do. There's obviously what we call one-off strategies where you can create a limit order to buy or sell, a range order to buy or sell, or you can also swap on spot, meaning if you would just want to take whatever is available on Carbon DeFi, meaning whatever strategies have been created, you want to trade against those as a taker, you can also do that, right? We obviously tell people trading as a maker is a little bit better because you do get more certainty in terms of you get to decide the exact price where you're buying and selling. And the protocol will respect essentially your trading preferences, right? When the market gets to that price point, at that point in time, hopefully your order will get partially or fully filled, right? This is the beauty of trading as a maker on Carbon DeFi. And I
Glenn,
think, yeah.
Oops. The first two you showed were 2 tokens, right? But because any of the users, like they can create a position or a strategy using one of these single tokens, right? Can you just show us the limit order, for example, if they wanted to, I don't know, buy the COTI dip, right? And they're using USDC. This would actually count towards TPs because it's an actual strategy. It doesn't necessarily consist of both of those tokens, right? But this is a way that they can do this as well.
Right, they can certainly participate in COTI Earn by creating a limit order that's
Yeah.
funded with one of the tokens or one of the tokens that's being rewarded. Right, there's 5 different tokens that have these rewards. Obviously, if you create the strategy and you fund that strategy with one of those tokens, then you will earn those TPs. Right.
Right. Once
You can do
it's
this on
filled, you
both
might
sides,
not
right?
be earning.
Either buying or selling. So whichever one you want to do, you can do that, right? Just for buying or selling these tokens on Carbon DeFi.
And an easy way too, Glenn, did we show them the little gift box icon up at the top? Because I think an easy way to, yeah, I know that we were looking at it a little bit earlier, so I don't know if it's blending now, but I think this is something. First of all, it was pointed out by some COTI community members that this was this was appreciated, right? So I want to give kudos to the Bancor contributors for adding this into the app. But for any new users who want to just explore, how are others participating in this campaign? How are they earning their TPs? What tokens are they trading? They can go to the explore page and they can search by a token or a pair or wallet address, as it says there in the search bar. Or you can go to that gift box and you can see some strategies that are already live and earning TPs in the COTI Earn program. Glenn, if they wanted to, right now we have it by pairs, but if they wanted to see this as strategies to see how other users are actually trading these, that's what I was wondering about. So they can have that visual there as well to get a better idea of how they might have placed, one or both of these tokens in this trading pair, right?
Yeah, I believe this just filters for the strategies that have the qualifying tokens in them. And this way, it's just easier for the end user here to view the actual strategies that others have created. But yeah, all of this, it's live. It's viewable in Carbon DeFi, and then you can always check out the different strategies like COTI Pengo, right? This is a strategy that has COTI in it, right? So therefore, it is earning TPs. So if you were to create a trading strategy under this trading pair, right, with some COTI, then you will be earning those CPs as well, right? And this is an example here. Obviously, we can look at others that are similar, but the idea here is to essentially create these on-chain trading strategies using the tokens that are getting rewarded, and then you will earn those TPs.
Awesome. If anybody has any questions about either, about COTI, Brad, where can any token projects, any projects in general reach out to you, or should they be reaching out to you specifically if they are looking to get more information on garbled circuits or just COTI in general?
Of course, you can reach out to me on Twitter. I think I'm included in the announcement of this space, but if not, it's COTI_ship. Feel very welcome to message me there. And then for users who want to get involved with COTI Earn, I don't think I mentioned, but if you're not currently holding assets on COTI, just go to Hyperlane, bridge those assets across USDC, Bitcoin, ETH, or you can use COTI and G-COTI once you're on the network, and then start depositing them in strategies with Carbon DeFi, and you will be part of COTI Earn.
Awesome. Thank you. And Glenn and Mark, for you guys, what's the best way to reach out to you for direct questions? Would it be the Telegram group, or do you prefer X, or how would you like for people to reach out? Glenn, I'll leave it with you.
I'll go first. Twitter, I'm on there, Primal Glenn. Telegram is the same. And then email should be glenn@bancor.network if that's your preferred method. But yeah, those 3 mediums are the easier ones to reach out to in case you want to contact me. And then, I think just going to mention, we do have a YouTube channel. It's called, just search for Bancor. Zeno, who's one of our contributors, he actually did a video on bridging over to COTI, if I'm remembering correctly, plus creating trading strategies. So check those out.
I will share that in the link as well. And if anybody has any general questions about Carbon DeFi also, you can go to the Telegram. It's Carbon DeFi XYZ. Mark, anything you would like to add, sir? I know it's the top of the hour, and I think you had a hard stop, so I think he's good. Silence is golden. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. Brad, Mark, Glenn, it's always a pleasure to have you guys. Thank you. Thank you for showing, Glenn, sharing your screen and showing the viewers now and anybody who may see the recording, you know, the campaign that we have live or that COTI has live on Carbon DeFi. And to all of the viewers, thank you guys so much for joining us. We will see you on the next Blockchain Banter.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.